Virtual learning is coming back to Chicago, not because of district policy, but because the Chicago Teachers Union voted, 73% of members voted to return to remote work. So schools will be going virtual again. Now, Ryan, we talk on this show a lot about how in-person learning so vitally important. I know you've experienced this with your family. Democrats, some in the Democratic Party have been, I think, underappreciative of how important it is to parents, to families, that they go to school, because the learning quality is clearly much better. It's terrible over virtual education for many kids, and also because parents need somewhere to send their kids. They need someone to watch their kids while they work. Do all of these parents have a virtual work option for who have kids in these schools? No, some of them do, but many of them don't. Probably most of them don't. So it's so inconvenient and frustrating for families. Now I know Omicron is causing this huge spike in cases, but as we've said before, if you're vaccinated, you're still very protected. We can talk about what other measures they need, but the teachers have just decided, nope, this is our call, and we are not doing this. And it is a unique power that they have, and no other employee sector gets to just shut down this whole thing.
Well, other unions could.
Well, with nowhere near the success rate as teachers unions, because they don't have as much power as teachers unions do.
And the argument that the teachers union made was, a long-term one that, hey, you have been neglecting these schools for a very long time. They are, dilapidated conditions, not well ventilated. Kids are, and in the winter in particular, kids are put in dangerous situations as a result of this. But two, they don't like the way that testing is made optional, and apparently they're at a single-digit, testing uptake rate. In D.C., they've actually made testing mandatory.
Right.
Maybe the teachers in Chicago were pushing for an opt-out, that you could opt out of testing. I don't even know if that exists. I don't think you can opt out in D.C. I yesterday, and the way it works, I went to the school yesterday. I picked up tests for the kids. We have to upload them today into the system, which I guarantee will break. And I will get frustrated, and I will shake my computer, and then eventually it will work, and we'll upload the tests. But yeah, so that was the teachers union argument. But there have been some recent studies that have shown that, and it's intuitive. Just because a kid doesn't go into school doesn't mean they're not coming into contact with people in the community, and Omicron is everywhere now. And so
it's everywhere, and I've been the biggest proponent of testing for the entire pandemic, but even I'm getting to the point where there are people I know who were sick, they were symptomatic, they take a test, it says negative, they take it the next day, it says negative, they take it third day into their clear COVID symptoms. They know they have COVID, and then they test positive. That's been an experience for a lot of people I know with Omicron.
It is easier to test negative with these antigens.
Yeah, so maybe, certainly mass testing, you're going to catch some infections early. I'm absolutely not saying there's no benefit. Certainly there is some benefit, but it's pretty inconvenient to make everyone mail in tests or you've seen those stacked post office boxes with tests that were sent in.
Right.
I mean, come on. It's what a headache.
Right. I mean, you could rely on some version of an honor system, which is DC was doing these self checks where you just had to say you took the temperature and it was clear. You could do a kind of that type of a version with testing in Chicago. Sorry about that.
Now we have the Omicron. Here
you go.
And another thing is, don't they worry that, and by they I mean the teachers unions, they're going to erode so much the support for the public education system. I mean, the per pupil funding for, I'm not exactly sure what it is in Chicago, but I think in New York and DC it's $25,000 or $30,000 that the school gets per kid per year. Imagine if you just gave the family, the kid, $25,000 a year. You could get a pretty elite private education for that much money in a lot of places. That's going to be on the upper echelon of what tuition costs at a very elite private institution. Right. But the school gets that money, not doing a lot of good with it.
And it's so,
is that going to occur to people?
I think there is a serious risk that the unions are just willing to take at this point. That they're willing to take a take a political capital hit in order to win this fight. And I think in Virginia, you saw some of the backlash play out there. Some of it was channeled through this like critical race theory stuff, but it was bound up with frustration.
All issues must be channeled through a culture war. Right. That is how we process.
It's the only way we can understand things in this country. So, by the way, the system you talk about is not unheard of. Vermont has this thing called school choice, which is different than the kind of charter school choice that we think of today. There are so many rural areas, and it may exist elsewhere, but I know it exists in Vermont. There's so many rural areas that just don't have a school. Like there's after elementary school, and in some cases for elementary school, there's literally no school. And there's too few kids for it to be worth building a building, hiring a principal, hiring teachers. It would cost $80,000, $90,000 per student because the class sizes would be single digits. And so they just give you full tuition to go to a private school somewhere. Wherever you want to go.
That's great.
Like one friend's friend was going to like a school in Switzerland, and they're not covering the room and board, but and so you have all of these private schools throughout the state.
The system makes a lot more sense because also why should you be? It's kind of weird that you should be. You just have to go to the school that exists in the zip code to which you were born. Or, I mean, in which you live. It's kind of a weird thing.
I mean, the problem becomes that very quickly would get eviscerated, and people's vouchers wouldn't be worth anything, and you'd have the poorest kids in the shoddiest possible schools. However, that's what we have now with this system where it's kind of half private and half public. But I do think that it is concerning to the extent to which public education is undermined by the hostility towards the teachers unions. And I think that the teachers unions could have had an opportunity to become like the frontline heroes. And come out.
That one passed by.
And come out of this pandemic with much more public support, and then the capital to go to the city and say, no, we here are all the problems that you've been neglecting that we told you about. They reared their heads during the pandemic. Here's how you can fix them. Instead, what's going to come out of this is a war between the public schools and the public, which is probably not helpful for the public schools.
I was going to read this from, I saw this on Twitter from Zedjelani, who's been on our show a bunch of times. He says someone passed along this note to him. This is from a Chicago teacher who posted this on Facebook, who said, absolutely no reason we should be voting yes to this. Everyone is going to get COVID at some point. If needed, take a leave of absence. Come back when you're ready. Stop taking food off my plate for things I do not agree with. I polled all my students today about remote learning. They all said it was too hard to stay focused in remote learning and that they felt like they didn't actually learn anything. This is supposed to be about the kids. There are plenty of people who have to go to work and be exposed on a daily basis. We are no better than anyone else, which is pretty aptly stated. So. We'll be back with more Rising right after this.